raise money is when you don't need it. And I've never met anyone that's regretted having too much money.
Michael Berro, the brand he's building, which is Chipoys, who has and is in the middle of building a huge, from nothing to something really, really big and interesting and international.
There's a tangible price to pay to get your company off the ground. And then getting international is not as simple as saying, okay, I want to ship my chip someplace else. There's different regulatory requirements. You've got to be where your customers are. That's being at the key trade shows, wherever they're living, that's where you have to live, and that you hope that word spreads and people enjoy what you're selling.
And that's the truth. Nothing happens overnight.
I think it's a combination of things. It is number one, ignore the bragging on social media and stuff like that, and realize that there are very few brands that are an overnight success. You remind yourself why you got into the business to begin with, having a plan on where you want your business to go. When you're starting a business, the most common question we get when we send samples, when we hand our bag to people is, are you sure this only has 2, 4, or 10? It's an artisanal kind of homemade recipe. Start rolling the dough early. We pack in a lot more corn than other brands do. We have our own unique spices. Figure out what your destination is and then make sure everything you're
Today's guest is Michael Berro, and this is going to be really interesting. This is a gentleman who has and is in the middle of building a huge, from nothing to something really big and interesting and international. And Mike is going to talk with us about it. But I encourage you to watch this and stay to the end, because he is going to be talking about some of the secret sauce. He's going to be telling you some of the tips and tricks and just some of the really important things that you need to know about funding and getting money to actually start your company, to continue to grow your company, how to go international, how to build a brand. And his brand, the brand he's building, which is Chipoys, and it's not just him, but him and his team are building, is something you're going to know. It's going to be a household name. I welcome you to the show. This is going to be a lot of fun, Mike. So listen, let's jump into it. And if you could just give everybody a little bit of a background on who you are, like how it came to be the CEO of this amazing, great company right now.
Thank you so much, Matt. So out of college, started working at Harold Levinson Associates, a large convenience store distributor in the Northeast. Sold pretty much everything you would see in a C-store except for beer. Throughout my career, would get frustrated that certain large companies would have their own exclusive route networks and would kind of bypass convenience store distributors and a lot of independent C-stores, which was our bread and butter. Was passionate about CBD. So after leaving HLA, dabbled in the CBD space, was a minority partner in Oliva, which got into 20,000 convenience stores and sold to Aurora Cannabis. Also did some work with Ignite, where I now met my good friend and now business partner, Eric Kozin. Eric had mentioned to me that he had a bunch of factory contacts in Mexico, and he knew branding and marketing with a really strong background there, and knew I knew distribution. Said, do you want to start a company together? And I said, get me a delicious tortilla chip that I can bring to convenience stores and convenience store distributors that couldn't get competing items, and let's do this. And 9 months of R&D later, we have what we think is the best tasting rolled tortilla chip on earth, in about 20,000 stores in the US, and should be in about 20 countries by Q1 of 2024.
That's ridiculous. And we are jumping right into it. I mean, that's like, and you did that, you said in 9 months?
About 18 months.
18 months. So in 18 months, you went from being 0 stores to 20,000.
Correct.
That's an amazing thing to achieve. So take me back to the beginning of the concept for this, right? The beginning is kind of interesting, but tell me for you how it went from, oh, Chipoys, here's the idea. Let's get a strategy together. Let's put a plan together and let's actually do this. Like what happened in the very beginning? Like, why did you even choose this?
So again, was tired of watching, my company bypassed by a lot of large CPG companies, especially in the snack space. Wanted to have something that I could go to my old company with. I was on the board of the Convenience Store Distribution Association, knew a lot of other C-store distributors throughout the country. And to be perfectly candid with you, that's really what we thought the ceiling was for the brand when we came up with the idea, having no idea there'd be potential explosive demand internationally. And so wanted to have a diverse group of founders. I'm really fortunate. 2 of my childhood friends that I've known since kindergarten are on the cap table as minority partners. One that does all of our legal work for free and has been an awesome advisor. Another friend that I've known since age 5 that works for a large fund that's been great with fundraising, help, working capital models, constantly reminding me that I'm in the working capital business and that I've never done fundraising. And then again, you've got Eric, who's, the genius behind the brand, who came up with the formula, name, packaging, et cetera. And I have the privilege to go out and sell it.
Was he the one that was involved with, was it Monster?
Yes.
I mean, the people that you have that you're working with, that's pretty major. I mean, everybody knows Monster. That's a household name. That brand is a household name, right? The energy drink,
Yep.
right? And he was part of, if I'm not mistaken, part of that going public, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was there relatively early, knowing all the guerrilla tactics and street fighting mindset, which is what you need to have if you're going to be in a startup, because the first couple of years are not fun or easy.
Right. You mentioned you've gone international, and it almost sounds like it's exceeded. I mean, maybe you dreamed of it getting this big and it's actually continuing to get bigger and bigger, but has it already exceeded the reality of where you thought it would be, even at this point, 18 months?
Yes, that was not part of the plan. We thought this would be fill a void, kind of make this a side hustle, have some passive income. If it goes well, maybe we'll raise some money. And again, having no idea that when we would attend trade shows pre-launch, that some of the largest convenience store chains in the country would stop by and say, I've been looking for a brand like this, or people internationally stopping by booths saying, I specifically flew out. I'd researched you and want to come out and meet you. And I was at the time wondering how people had even heard of us across the pond. So sometimes better to be lucky than good.
Right. It's interesting. This show is not an advertisement for your brand. This show, as we get into it, is really about how you guys are doing what you're doing. And it's so interesting. But I've tried them. You've given me every flavor to try, and they really are better. What's the other major company that's out there?
Taki,
right. So I think everybody's heard of those, but these legit are better. Like, how did you guys come up with a better product? Like, what could you do differently that makes it's a chip. It legit is better. And by the way, the bag, we all go to the store, we buy a bag of chips. The bag feels like there's nothing in it. You give me a bag of chips, the bag is like full to the top. It feels heavy. Like, that's a competitive advantage. Like, to have a bag that feels heavier, that subconsciously makes you feel like you're getting better value. And the damn chip is better.
The most common question we get when we send samples, or we hand our bag to people, is, are you sure this only has 2, 4, or 10 ounces in there? Because, we're in the chip business. We're not in the selling air business. We want consumers to get a great value. As far as the process, it's an artisanal kind of homemade recipe. Start rolling the dough early in the morning. We pack in a lot more corn than other brands in the space do. We have our own unique spices to it. We want people to enjoy the crunch. The first thing that you're going to taste when you enjoy our chip is the corn. The spice is going to kind of hit you later and have a delayed reaction. So we have had some people kind of scarf down our fire red hot, think that they're fine, and then 30 seconds later, they're gasping for air and, trying to drink some water.
Do you remember when we were out to dinner with a few people and you brought a bunch of samples?
Yes.
And I forget who it was, but somebody did that. And they were like, with the water, it's like a delayed reaction.
Yes. Yeah. Again, you're going to enjoy the crunch. You're going to taste the corn, and then the spice is going to hit you a little bit later. Some of the other brands in the space, the first thing that's going to hit you is the spice, not necessarily that it's a bad thing. We just do things a little bit differently.
Yeah. And I don't expect you to give away your secret sauce here. I think one of the messages here is, if you're going into a space that is crowded, like I'm in the IT business, I mean, it's a very crowded space. Something has to be a differentiator. So for us, it's just white glove service and relationships, which is important. But you guys actually have a tangible product, and you've actually managed to make it better.
Yeah, appreciate that. And we try to do a lot of things differently, because as you said, when you're entering a crowded space, that you're the underdog. We put fewer bags in our box, so it's easier for the retailers, peg holes, so it's easy to punch in there, try to offer bigger margins to the trade, as you mentioned, a great value to the consumer. And there's certainly work to be done to get that trial in store and with out-of-home marketing, but we are confident that once we get that consumer for the first time, we're going to keep them for a very long time.
Are you able to talk about, I don't know if you remember, you were telling me about some changes you guys were making to the, I think it was the boxes or the packaging, in order to increase potential sales on Amazon. Because that was really interesting strategy. And I think that would be of value to some people out there too. Like the creativity and just knowing, like, in depth, like how you can really, really dig in and keep finding more and more ways to be out there and to be found by people. Right? Amazon science that you told me about, which was like mind blowing.
Yeah. Again, I always try to be the least intelligent person in any room that I'm in. I certainly am right now. Our Amazon partners are unbelievable. One of the gentlemen used to report directly to Jeff Bezos. So he was giving me all the things that he needs to do with ASINs and the algorithm and stuff like that to make sure that you show up from a ranking standpoint. We're going to be giving Amazon their own specific packaging with what we call our Day of the Dead theme that really, really pops. It scored really highly on the testing that we did through them. And, Amazon needs to be treated as its own trade channel, the same way you would treat Costco differently than you treat a convenience store. I'm not going to pretend that I knew that when I started the company, but as we've been engaging more and more with the experts, they coach us through what we need, and our ops team hustles. And if they need to do something unique to make a customer happy, especially a large one, we're going to figure out how to get it done. And obviously, whatever we do in Amazon is going to support our retail efforts as well. Because to your earlier point, the more people we get buying our chips in bulk, trying them, sharing them with their friends, the more fans we have and the more take-home rate we're going to have.
That's right. And I have a few questions. We'll get to it in a few minutes about marketing. Are you able to actually talk about, it's not a secret, right, about how the packaging actually gets you higher rankings?
Yeah, so they have their scores that they give you. Our packaging right now scored okay. Then we played around with some different iterations until we got the one that we scored the best. I was fortunate enough to be put on a call with one of the snack category managers over at Amazon and said, you do this and you've got a 7-figure business on our hands. And to your point, Matt, different businesses, but we're all in the customer service business. Amazon is a multi-trillion-dollar company. Whatever they tell us to do, we're going to figure out how to get it done, take advantage of the opportunity, and build up our fan base as fast and aggressively as possible.
That fan base is growing. I watch you on social media and I get all the different things that pop up, and you can see the different things that are happening. Somebody was telling me a week or two ago that they got into an Uber and the Uber driver was eating your chips. True.
Yeah.
So many people dream about becoming international, but for you guys, it happened. What was that turning point where you were able to all of a sudden become international? All of a sudden, there's other countries that want your chips. Do you remember when that happened?
I do. So there's a big trade show called Sweets and Snacks. It's any type of candy and snack you can think of in May, normally in Chicago every year. Starting next year, it moves to Indianapolis. We're at the show, small 10 by 10 booth, brand new company, had our few hundred convenience stores at the time, and fortunately got a ton of domestic wins as well. But we had 4 different distributors from the UK stop by, people from Spain and Germany say, we've been looking for a chip like this to bring to Europe and we've heard about you. I'm like, what do you mean you've heard about us? We've barely done anything. And he was like, no, we've found you on the internet and friends I guess a large world can become a small one very, very quickly when it comes to international trade. So I guess when people found out that there was a better tasting rolled tortilla chip, that spread pretty quickly. And one partner in particular had awesome distribution, father and son team really hit it off with them. And then getting international is not as simple as saying, okay, I want to ship my chip someplace else. There's different regulatory requirements, packaging requirements. In the case of our chip, there's certain ingredients that are okay to sell in the US that are not okay to sell in Europe and the Middle East. So we're just launching, getting some US momentum. And then I've got to go back to the ops team and say, guess what, ladies and gentlemen, we're now starting the R&D phase all over again. Give me a chip that tastes even better without red 40 and yellow 5, and then converting packaging into grams instead of ounces. And, the back of the bag is laid out differently. And fortunately, we had partners that were coaching us through this entire process. Our regulatory team working with their regulatory team, getting approval. And then again, you think you're just kind of dipping your toe in the water. They did their pre-sales and they're like, by the way, we need 19 containers of your chip to launch next year. So it's okay, let's go to the board. Let's get approval to get new equipment. Let's get another investment round done because you're going to need a lot of money for packaging, production of chips, shipping across the pond. And then as that's launching, we got phone calls from Germany as well. And, now about 9 months into this, extremely fortunate to have an amazing strategic partner in Chef Sam that's built brands like Tony's Chocolonely and Vita Coco, Oatly, etc. So, they've got 45 sales reps, relationships in every country throughout Europe, relationships with every major grocery chain. So to sit back and see WhatsApp messages that were landing large grocery chains that in some cases I didn't even know existed until we got them is pretty fortuitous. And now just as we're stepping up our marketing efforts in the US, we've got to do the same thing in Europe and the Middle East.
You have a good product that actually is better than the competition, in many people's opinions. You have word of mouth. It went international because people knew about you that you didn't even know knew about you. And so it's interesting that you weren't on social media so heavily at that point. Like somehow the word just spread.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, people do
But it
business.
wasn't by accident. It wasn't luck. I mean, you guys have had a good product out there and you were traveling around. You guys were putting out effort. Like you were putting something out there into the universe. Like, here's our product. So not accidentally, people that were looking for something like that found you.
Yeah. I
Next
mean,
thing you know, you're international.
you've got to be where your customers are. So if that's being in the trade, that's being at the key trade shows, that's hitting the road, that's telling your wife and kids that you're going to see a lot less of daddy for the next couple of years, but hopefully it's all worth it. And then the same thing with trying to reach your consumer. Our consumer skews a little bit younger. They live on their phone and on social media. To your point, we've been ramping that up with an Instagram post every single day. We're going to start to do some influencer outreach. You're going to see a lot more activity on TikTok, a lot more sampling events, sporting events, partnering on college campuses, et cetera. So whether it's your brick and mortar partners or your end consumer, wherever they're living, that's where you have to live, and that you hope that word spreads and people enjoy what you're selling.
Have you guys run into any major like setbacks along the way? Right. You have a few key people that came together with this idea. You're producing a great product. It's moving maybe faster than you thought, and it's taking off in a bigger way than you guys thought. Did you run into any setbacks that you were like, whoa, shoot, this is a serious problem?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, growing pains galore when you're getting started, peg holes not being punched through properly and needing to better automate the equipment. I said, okay, everyone's going to throw away the inner boxes, so let's use plain white boxes. They're cheaper. And then we get into a bunch of cash and carry locations where people just stack this and they see a boring white box and don't know what it is. And we had some of our early adopters saying, can you promote this or transfer it someplace else, because nobody knows what it is when they're just walking around, seeing pallet stacks. In my location, we didn't have floor displays or clip strips or signage. We said, okay, we're just going to get in here, fill a void. The product's kind of self-explanatory. Again, a mistake by yours truly on that one to not have those things on day one. So we mastered the on the shelf, and then 2023 has been the big focus of expanded distribution and getting off the shelf. Again, having those floor displays out there, better merchandising vehicles. We had 2 flavors last year. Now we've got 4, giving us more of the billboard effect, trying to run some promo deals with either sandwiches or fountain drinks and other complimentary items. So we're learning every single day, and we're trying to get better every single day, but certainly this has not been a mistake-free launch.
It hasn't been like a straight line. There's been some.
There's been plenty of zigs and zags, and I'm sure there will continue.
That's an important message too, because you guys have put together a great team of people with a lot of experience, but nothing's a straight line. So anybody who's a startup business or even been around for 5-10 years, it's like there's always challenges. And as much as you prepare, how do you guys actually like emotionally manage when things get really difficult? Like, how do you guys get through that? Is it just your years of experience where you just know, like, all right, stay calm, cool, collected, and then we'll get through it?
I think it's a combination of things. It is number one, I've got my rough moments like anybody else does, personally and professionally. I think having business partners that are also friends that have your back and you've got theirs make it easy. And whatever it is, we're going to figure it out and get through it. We've got awesome strategic partners, whether it's our national broker network or a lot of people that we've got personal relationship with. I mentioned some of our international partners that have prioritized Chipoys over some much more established brands that they've been distributing, either due to enthusiasm, personal relationships, or a combination of both. But we all have our moments where you have a couple consecutive bad phone calls or emails and stuff like that, and you have a moment where you don't even want to look at your phone or computer, and then that stops there for 15 seconds when it buzzes again, and then that you've got to pick yourself up and do it again. So what I would say to any entrepreneur is, a lot of people see the exits, the success, the glamorous stuff that people talk about. If you really dig into it, you're going to be hard pressed to find any entrepreneur that ended up being successful, not being successful, that didn't have a ton of hiccups, didn't have a ton of roadblocks, or quite frankly, I don't know too many people that enjoyed their first couple years of getting a product off the ground, because it's usually more bad news than good news. You're wearing 7 or 8 different hats, and there's a tangible price to pay to get your company off the ground. The international stuff is great. but my 3 o'clock in the morning is 9 a.m. in Spain. My 2 o'clock in the morning is 9 a.m. in Saudi Arabia. I'm not great with turning notifications off on my phone. So there are times where I wake up at 3:30 in the morning and I've got 30 messages to get back to. And I just finished checking my email at 11 o'clock and my text messages the night before. But this is what we signed up for if we want to be big on a domestic and, as you said, hopefully global scale.
I mean, I'm hearing you say that there's sacrifice and even those first couple of years. So what is it that when somebody might want to just say, screw it, I give up, like it's been 3 years, I'm tired of this, it's not going to happen. What do you say to somebody who, like, how do they get through that moment? Like, I get how you get through it, but what does somebody else do? Like, how do you push through it?
You just remind yourself that ignore the bragging on social media and stuff like that and realize that there are very few brands that are an overnight success. There are brands that I know that 10 years later are still trying to make their first dime and trying to expand distribution. But you remind yourself why you got into the business to begin with. You focus on your why, whether it's a personal desire to be successful, to provide for your family, to take care of your investors, your business partners. Maybe you're on a mission that's really meaningful to you because it's doing something better for the world. And you take a deep breath, you try to block out the bad stuff and just look in the mirror and give yourself a little bit of pep talk and remind yourself why you did this to begin with.
That's really important when you talk about the why. That's the answer for everybody. It comes back to, why am I doing this? And for some people, like for me, I don't want to work for somebody else. Like there's no chance I'm going back to corporate. Everybody's got their why, but there's also, I guess, speaking from experience, the satisfaction that you get from building something, the satisfaction you get from creating opportunity for other people to be a part of something. Like there's so many reasons why. And when that's all lined up for the right reasons, people do it for the money, but the money just comes when the why is really a good why. The money comes. In your guys' case, things are moving kind of fast. Speaking of money, so a lot of people struggle with getting the funding to get things off the ground and to get things moving. How does that work? How does it work for you guys? Are you guys doing something different, or is it you found typical path? Like, how are you getting the funding?
A lot of it, I've been fortunate, and you've met some of the friends and investors. Eric and I came from a CPG background, so we had some of those contacts and credibility to begin with, brought on a couple investors who really just became evangelical supporters of Chipoys. And they would say, I'm into this. It's going to be big. Haven't felt this excited about something in a long time. You get on the phone with them. Fortunately, we've been closing most of the people that we've been speaking to. And I've got my friend and partner, Harris, in my ear every single day saying, remember, you're in the working capital business. So you're going to be on low net margins, paying for trade shows, paying for shipping, paying for staff, extending terms to customers, buying more packaging and building more backstock as business grows. So you kind of accept the fact that you're going to be in the fundraising business for a while. In our case, we try to keep a lean team, all wear multiple hats, and to your point, punch above our weight a little bit. Now, in particular, with what's going on with interest rates and the stock market, is not exactly a fun time to raise money. So my advice to any entrepreneur is the best time to raise money is when you don't need it. And I've never met anyone that's regretted having too much money in their business's bank account. I always tell everyone that it should be my biggest problem that 1 or 2 points of dilution end up being worth millions of dollars. Because if that's the case, I've got more money than I know what to do with anyway. And I've seen a lot of companies wanting to wait for that next metric or multiples to get bigger, delay fundraising and stuff like that. The business doesn't perform the way they want it to. And I've seen a lot more entrepreneurs kick themselves in the ass for raising too little money than I have people get upset with themselves from raising too much.
That's a really interesting point. And it is difficult to get money right now. It's unbelievable. I actually went to get a tiny, tiny little loan. I mean, tiny, off the equity in my house, which is like 7-figure equity, right?
Yeah.
What I went through to get this little tiny bit of money was like, I can't even believe. And if I'm going through that and I have really good credit and assets and healthy business, I can't imagine what somebody's going through that's a startup.
It's tough because you have people saying either they're scared of an economic crash and they want to hold on to their cash, or Mike, I'm getting guaranteed 13% returns on lending that are backstopped by other assets and stuff like that. And when you have those type of guaranteed returns out there, some of the higher risk investments just look less attractive to people. And for us, it's been important to have that diverse customer base, make sure there's always a cushion financially, and, sell not only the upside, but the downside risk of, do you really think this brand with all the distribution that we have has the ability to fail in 10 to 20 different countries? And fortunately, the
Right.
reaction from most investors has been no.
Right.
They do believe that we'll be successful, and some hopefully believe that we'll be successful everywhere. But last 60 days or so have been the most challenging fundraising stretch that we've dealt with.
And I guess for you guys, the timing in a way was fortunate because you did a couple of rounds and you guys really have moved in a really, really good direction. And interestingly enough, I think you mentioned to me that that major brand actually knows about you guys. I mean, you're on their radar now. They're probably concerned, like, whoa, who are these guys? And this isn't good because you have a better product. You're taking market share.
Yeah, I mean, testament to them that they're part of a massive conglomerate. You wouldn't think that we'd be on
Right.
their radar, but we've had some accounts say, we showed them your bag and they came back with a better program or promotion and stuff like that. So the trade has been responsive. Large snack companies, whether it's Frito-Lay or anybody else, don't just concede their shelf space to startups very easily. So again, that's where some of the earlier tactics of smaller pack size, longer shelf life, better margins and stuff like that, we've had to have multiple ways to differentiate ourselves. And from a sales standpoint, I've always taken the approach, give the buyer as few reasons as possible to say no, and you usually get a yes. So we've tried to design this to be as retail and distributor friendly as possible. And then if the consumer loves the chip after that, then you're checking a lot of boxes.
Yeah, I mean, you guys come in and you're being disruptive. It's kind of cool because that's, I guess, fortunately for other people, for your competitors, it forces them to take their game up a little bit. It's an interesting story because your brand, you have a better product, but let's talk about your branding for a second. Your branding is like critical. Like you have an identity that's very, very unique. The name is unique. And I guess it seems like as you guys have moved along for the past few quarters, your branding is becoming, it's evolving. Right. So what's special about your branding and where has it gone from and where's it going to?
It started, packaging wasn't even that big of a concern, used an agency, got something done, looked okay on a computer, saw it on shelf and said, okay, this has an opportunity to improve. And we made the logo, bigger and bolder. We showed some of the spices to pop more on the bag. And then what we've been hearing more and more of, especially throughout the sampling events, is how excited the Mexican American community is about our chip and having a chip that really tastes like home. And we've realized we've kind of underplayed that authenticity on our packaging and social media. So you'll see more of that on social. Mention the Day of the Dead theme that we're going to be rolling out on Amazon. We're dabbling with iterations of our bags that have Aztec font on the bottom of them and, authentic Mexican chip on the top. And, we really want people to associate us with that home style artisanal chip that brings them back home or brings them to a place that they'd love to travel to. So like everything else that we're doing, we're trying to get better every single day, and branding and marketing is our number one priority as a company right now.
And it's really interesting because isn't branding basically creating an emotional connection to your, not just your logo, but all the details you're talking about, the brand story, the connection authentically, that makes people feel like they want this for so many reasons. And it's interesting that you guys are able to move and change quickly because you're not this huge conglomerate. If you want to change your branding, you just change it.
Yeah.
How many people have to raise their hand to vote for that? It isn't like a huge agency. Whatever the size of your team is that's handling branding, you guys can move swiftly. You're agile.
We get to move swiftly. We do try to incorporate as many of our stakeholders as possible, especially the trade. So I mentioned the Amazon example. We would never tell Amazon, here's what you're getting. We showed our partners and Amazon a few different iterations. And when we found the version that everybody was really excited about, that's what we went with. And same thing with what we're bringing to brick and mortar. We've been showing that to our brokers, some of our key accounts, key distributors and stuff like that, some of which have given us feedback on how to improve it. But yes, at the end of the day, there's not a 30-person committee that needs to sign off on us. When a couple of us feel like we've gotten enough data points and solid feedback and that everyone feels really good about something, we move. And we keep enough backstock on packaging on hand to make sure that we never run out of chips, but not a crazy amount that would prevent us from pivoting if we either saw an opportunity or there was a regulatory change or anything else.
So as this is all falling into place, right, and the demand is getting greater, I mean, you're talking now about balancing it, but you keep having to incrementally balance something bigger that's moving faster, that's having more demand, right? So like even now as we speak, there's probably some things that are happening. There's probably some more demand that's building up. What's the downside risk that you are going to be stuck with something? Like how do you actually keep that balance just right?
I don't know that we do it just right. We try to kind of have our magic numbers of how many months of backstock we hold on packaging at any given time, because if you're out of packaging, you're out of chips, and run our forecast for what we're selling of each item. So you make sure that you've got enough where you're never jeopardizing being out of stock. But if something bigger, better comes along, you want a chance to be able to pounce on it. And to your point, first we started with separate bags for the UK. Then our German partners got us into Riva, Kaufland, and Edeka, the three largest grocery chains in Germany. But they said, Mike, they're not going to work with stickers. So you need to have bags with German. So I said, okay, here we go again. Get the regulatory team involved. Ops, how many bags do we need to order? What's the minimum? What do we think that we're going to sell? And now we've got a bag that's performing great. And then depending on exactly when we make our pivot on packaging change, there might be some bags that end up going in the garbage so we can have uniformity around the globe on what our packaging looks like. And sometimes you don't know when you've made the right decision until months down the line.
Exactly. You mentioned before something interesting, which is having enough money, making sure that you have enough. And have you run into a spot yet where it's like, wait, we didn't expect this to happen. We just learned something new about a certain country that wants something a certain way. We didn't budget for this. We didn't prepare for this. And as much as we all know, oh, this is new information and it's going to cost X. Have you had any of those, like a grenade over the fence, like, oops?
Oh yeah, we've definitely had our oh shoot moments, and probably used a different S word.
You can say oh shit. It makes things a little spicier. No pun intended.
I see what you did there with the spice. Well played, Matt. So yeah, I mean, we're getting a bunch of inquiries from the Middle East, and they want packaging in Arabic. At one point last year, we were ready to roll out a different form factor of chips with our spices, and we had just finished a big round. And oh, great, we finally have cash, and let's go long on packaging. And then you kind of speak to the trade, and they're like, let's get your first 4 flavors off the ground before we get into other form factors. We're going to be opening up a factory in Europe at some point in Q1 or Q2 of next year, looking at one in India and the Middle East, buying equipment from overseas to install in our factory in Mexico. So yeah, you have the working capital business of your day-to-day AR and packaging and stuff like that. And then you have the outlay to get new factories going, and you can't necessarily do everything at once, not only because of personal bandwidth, but you get into capital bandwidth issues as well.
It just gets exponentially bigger. But the problems, the business grows, the revenue grows, the expenses grow. It grows maybe laterally. It's kind of like it stays in sync.
Yeah, it's no different than having kids. Little kids, little problems, big kids.
Yeah.
Big problems. If we made a mistake with white boxes in our first 3 or 4 months, or bags when we only had $60,000 or $70,000 worth of packaging inventory, you move through that without an issue. A couple $100,000 mistakes will catch up with you no matter how big you are.
And these are the kind of things that startups, I mean, there's so many people, especially in the past like 10 years where money was cheap and everybody was starting a business and everybody was an entrepreneur, that I think a lot of people, and this is just my opinion and just from things I read and just from listening, a lot of people have come to find out that this stuff isn't so simple, and you do have to know what you're doing, and you do have to have a good team, and you do need mentors. And it sounds like you've got not just a good team, but there's people that are around you that are mentoring in certain ways, whether it's legal or it's experience with Amazon. You can't actually shortcut this process. Every single ingredient is real. Business hasn't changed. You still need all of these ingredients.
No, and to your point, I think when multiples were bloated and money was cheap, you've seen a lot of companies come crashing down that developed a lot of bad habits because they had more money than they knew what to do with. And let's get marble in our offices. Everyone needs 4 executive
Right.
assistants. Let's all
Right.
travel first class. And it's hard to dig out of it. I'm fortunate enough to be friendly with Damon John, founder of Fubu, Shark Tank. He stopped by our booth at NAX. I will reciprocate and give him a plug. I would recommend that any entrepreneur read his book, Power of Broke. And it's his commentary in a series of stories of companies that started with next to nothing in cash that institutionalized watching every penny and focusing on margins and stuff like that. And then you have the companies that, whether it was the tech boom or CBD or plant-based craze, that were raising 8 figures simply because they existed. And it became a race to figure out how fast they could spend it, because in their mind, there's always going to be that next big check. And once you have a lack of concern for your bottom line or bloated staffing institutionalized in your company culture, that's a really, really hard thing
That's right.
to dig out of.
Early on, I worked for a company in New York City when I just got into IT back in like the early 2000s, 99, 2000, 2001. And there was a $3 billion public company at the time. I think they're still just the same size. And I was in IT and I did IT support for the executives. And I actually remember that they would spend money. This is just when Sarbanes-Oxley and the SEC started. It's when all that stuff started happening. They had paintings like in the lobby on the main executive floor that were like $500,000 paintings. And I remember like there was conversations about it. And every time a new CEO came or went, they would gut the CEO's corner office, all new furniture, all new. And after Sarbanes-Oxley happened, all that stuff changed. I mean, that was a while ago, but I just remember the unnecessary spending, the board meetings that I would go to as the IT guy. They would have them at the 21 Club in New York City, and the money that they would spend on this stuff would be like, and then it just stopped. It literally just stopped after all that SEC stuff happened.
Early on in my career, I was a customer of a company that spent $2 million redecorating the lobby of the hotel that their company was staying at for a corporate retreat because they didn't like the way
$2
the
million.
lobby. And you're thinking like, there's absolutely no way that's the best application of $2 million.
Right.
I'm sure the employees that were staying there would have much rather have gotten a bonus check than staring at a lobby that you thought looked nicer for a couple of days.
There's a guy, he passed away a few years ago, but there was a guy that I knew for a long time, most of my life. And he said something to me once, which was, I think about it every so often. If you look at my office now, so I have my office here in Florida, and down the hall, I have this little tiny office. What is it, 300 square feet? I mean, it's tiny. Maybe it's a desk, it's a whiteboard. It looks like the room you're in. It's a whiteboard, a desk, and a window, and a little standing desk. And he used to say to me, like, you don't waste money on nonsense. A big office and office space. Like, he's like, it doesn't matter. Nobody cares. All it does is make you feel good, like achieve something or you're some big shot. And I went through that as I was building my company. I went through having this huge office with like conference room tables and TV. And I went through all that, and I got back to center to the point where like I just need a little tiny room with a chair, a desk, and a window. And I'm more productive in that room than I am with this office 20 times the size. It's just to your point, like it's all a waste of money. It's all a waste of money. And it serves no purpose. It's all about making you feel good,
Or trying to convince somebody else that you're bigger or better.
Yeah. And now with Zoom, I have new clients that have come on over the past few years that I still to this day haven't met in person, and they don't care. We provide a phenomenal service. They're getting a great product, and they don't care that they've never met me in person. It's interesting how things have changed. So it's brought costs back to reality.
Yeah.
That's my point. And so you're right. You're right. And you guys are running a tight ship. I know for sure that you guys are running a tight ship. And it's interesting now what's happening because, so you guys mostly raised money. Just getting back to you guys for a sec.
Yep.
You guys mostly raised money through different rounds, and you have investors, and you were able pretty quickly to show those people value. I mean, even to everybody's surprise, like, whoa, this is growing quickly and this is really moving. It's not just like a hope that somebody who invested in your company may get a return. Like it's already happened. Like there's been exponential growth already.
Yeah. So one of the things that I would encourage everyone, because I've invested in more companies than I've helped start, because I've only helped start a couple, is I can't stand when I only hear from founders when they need money. I try to send out updates to investors every 30 to 45 days. I try to proactively communicate with that core group of investors that have stuck their neck out for the company and reached out to friends and stuff like that. And again, I believe every stakeholder in the business is important. Our employees are important. Our customers are important. Our broker network's important. Our investors are important. And you try to communicate with, make sure every single one of them is happy. And if they're not, you try to figure out what you can do to make them happy as long as it's reasonable for the business. And there are companies where I've actually told them, like, stop reaching out to me. I only get texts or emails when you need cash. Like, I've told you that I want to be in the loop or that I can help. And I kind of made a promise to myself that that wasn't going to be me as a founder.
Is that scalable? Like, to continue to do that as you continue? I think you guys are doing another round, or you did one recently, right? So there's more investors.
Yeah, we're hoping to close. Our last one got about mid six figures left on it, hoping to have it closed in, certainly by the end of 2023, and then put that money into marketing and further growth capital. And then again, not going to go into any bloated teams or fancy trade show booths or offices and stuff like that. Just going to go into selling as many chips as humanly possible.
Is it scalable for you to, as busy as you are, and with all of the trade shows and all of the things that you're doing, to continue to be as communicative with the investors? Or at some point, are you going to have to bring somebody in to do investor relations?
So a lot of people, and this is kind of a blessing and a curse, have invested in the company, betting on myself and the other founders of the company. I know how hard it is after taxes, inflation, and everything else to net enough money to write somebody a check. I take the investors' money a lot more seriously than I do my own. I don't wake up with a knot in my stomach every single day over what I'm going to get out of this company. It's more just making sure that you're never letting anybody down that bet on you. So if I've got to make myself available on nights, weekends, gaps between calls, whatever, I'm going to reach out proactively. And if an investor ever has a question for me and they want to know what's going on, I'm going to make sure that I'm the one that answers it.
Because I know you personally, I know that is true. I mean, that is how you operate. And you've actually shared that perspective with me several times. So that consistency, I think, is uncommon. Would you agree that most people in your position might get so caught up because they're so busy that the importance of those communications and that connection with the investors, they might be like, okay, somebody else can do it, but you're not. Like, you believe so deeply in those relationships and in those people that invested in you and in the company. Do you think that's common? Do you think most people continue on like that?
I'm not sure. It's, I guess, from a physical and mental health standpoint, you could debate how great it is, because I've got friends that are CEOs of public and private companies that have either gone out of business, that have lost 8 figures of investor money, or watched market caps decline by 9 figures when I'm the custodian of somebody else's wealth, especially people that say, we're betting on you and your team as much as we are the product. That's what drives me every day. There are times where I wish that maybe I was a little bit less concerned and could take the mindset of some other founders of saying, okay, they knew the risk. They wrote a check that in most cases they probably can afford to lose. I'm going to do the best that I can. If it works, great. If it doesn't, I'll move on to the next thing. Fortunately or unfortunately, I'm just not wired.
It's like a gift and a curse, because I can relate to what you're saying when you care so much about the customers. So in your case, I'm not talking about customers, we're talking about investors, but those relationships become very personal. And when you have this type of mentality, it is a gift because the people around you love it. And it's just a great thing to have. And at the same time, it's a curse because, like, you can't not be that person. So you have to fulfill the promise. You have to communicate. You have to make sure people are answered. Like, if you don't feel good. Like it's like that's why it's a healthy curse.
Yeah, I won't
separate people.
I won't go to sleep with unread emails or text messages. But the flip side, when my daughter said to me last year, Dad, any chance for my birthday that you could put your phone down for a couple hours and just pay attention to me, like, that hits hard. And there's tangible cost and sacrifice for being wired that way. So I'm not saying this from a point of advocacy. I'm just talking about the way that I'm wired.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the way some people are wired. And it's very common with entrepreneurs who are like, it's not every entrepreneur, right? There's plenty of people that will start something and maybe they'll give it 80%, but it's the people that give it 100%. Like, you guys are like a freight train going like full speed ahead. Is there any piece of advice that you would give to somebody who's thinking about starting? Maybe somebody's working full time, they have a side gig and they believe in it. They think they can make it happen. They're kind of in a position where maybe they can leave the full-time thing. Is there any piece of advice you would give somebody who's ready to take the plunge and go all in, knowing that they're going to have a few years of pain, suffering, ups, downs?
Yeah.
You know?
So I think some of the best advice that I've gotten in business is when you're starting a business, or even if you have an existing one that you're trying to scale, figure out what your destination is and then make sure everything you're doing is working backwards from that destination. So when we realized we had a chance to be a consequential global player in this market, what does that company look like? Okay, it's going to have healthy 8 figures worth of capacity. It's going to have a diverse team. It's going to make sure that we've got expertise from a regulatory standpoint, and then try to have a reason that you're doing this other than money. Because for a minimum of the first few years, especially if you've been successful in other industries, you're going to be taking a significant pay cut. And I know people that have emptied out 401ks and downsized their homes and stuff like that. And you're going to have moments. I mean, Matt, I know you talked about enjoying working for yourself. I'm the worst boss that I've ever had. I make myself work 18 hours a day. I work Monday through Sunday and stuff like that. So I think, having a plan on where you want your business to go, and whether it's yourself or with your family, having a budget so you can sustain taking little to no salary, because that's the kind of stuff that most people don't talk about when they're celebrating their wins on LinkedIn or other social media platforms. The things that suck kind of get glossed over a lot.
It's like the wins. You've seen those images, like where there'll be like an iceberg.
Yep.
Right. And it's like the climb, and then there's like success, and the success is just the tip of the iceberg. That's what people see.
All the things
See
underneath
20
that you
years.
don't see. Yeah.
And that's the truth. Nothing happens overnight. And you guys are moving quick, but I know how hard you work, and I know how much time you put in. And I only know what I know. There's a lot that I don't know about how much time you're putting in, and the rest of the partners you have. And that's a great message. You've got to be prepared to really, really sacrifice. And I guess, like you said before, when you're going through that, knowing what your why is, and as you just said, knowing what your destination is, will help keep your feet pointed in the right direction. And I might add to this, my own experience, the moments when you feel like giving up are the moments where something's just about to happen. Like, push through giving up, because it's right around the corner is where you'll start to see some of the success and some of the fruits of your labor. Don't give up too soon. And you never know when it's going to be. It's like a barometer, maybe, or a thermometer, but you have something inside of you that just knows, like, man, if I give up, I won't know what could have just happened.
Yeah.
And maybe you have to give it. Maybe you've run out of money, you've run out of resource, and there's no choice. But if that's not the case and you can still go, then you got to keep going.
Yeah.
You got to keep going.
Yeah.
Tell me what we can expect maybe in the next, 12 to 18 months. What countries do you think you're going to be going into? Like, what's on the horizon? What are you guys working on?
Yeah, expect, if you're in Europe or you travel there, to see a lot more of Chipoys throughout Europe. We've now launched our 10-ounce bag, which the grocery channel has been asking for. So expect a big focus and a big push, and hopefully seeing a lot more of our chips in grocery stores, just as you've seen them in convenience stores, and expect us to see us be a lot more loud and a lot more active on social media.
Awesome. And if anybody is interested in reaching you, or is there any information you want us to put out there, as far as, obviously we have the brand, but is there maybe if there's investors, is there a way to reach you? Like, what do you want to share with everybody about you guys?
Yeah, my email is really simple. It's michael@chipoys.com. I don't duck phone calls and emails and stuff like that. So if anyone's got a question about the business, or anyone's interested in investing, they'll probably be surprised with how quickly they get a response.
And the best time to call you is 3:00 in the morning, you're saying, right?
Yeah, any time between 3 a.m. and 11 p.m. Between those hours, I try to sleep, nap, whatever you want to call it.
Except your alerts are on, so good luck.
Yeah.
We're gonna make sure that down below in the description is all of your contact information, anything that you give us about the brand, how to reach you guys, a website, social media. It's all down below. Mike, thanks for coming on. This was actually really fun, really interesting. All right, my friend, thank you again. We appreciate you being on the show.